Joining me in studio right now, the mayor of Lubbock, Texas, Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope.
Good morning.
Welcome back.
It's great to be here, Chad.
Great to have you in.
Smile anytime I hear about good barbecue, and particularly the Shack, it makes me smile. So it's a good way to start the show.
Yeah.
It's good to be here with you.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. Yesterday, you announced that I don't think it really surprised anybody, but you're running for re-election. I guess we'll go at the first question I have. Was it a tough decision at all to say, yeah, I'm going to run for re-election?
I think no. Let's start with no. We worked hard to get elected. We worked for 6 months, nearly every minute of every day to get elected. And now we're 17 months into our term. We've made some progress, but there's a lot of work to be done. And so my wife and I chatted about it, and we felt like we'd like a chance to serve 2 more years. And so that's what we're going to take to the voters and ask for their support.
Have you thought about future? How long?
No,
it's one of those where, for mayor, it's every 2 years, but it doesn't seem like mayors kind of stick around past that 4-year mark.
Yeah, we've only had one. I guess we've had one 3-term mayor. Peck McMahon, I believe, was the only 3-term mayor. We'd like just to run it one term. Look at one term at a time. I think my tendency would be to stay shorter rather than longer. I believe that Lubbock citizens have in some ways imposed their own term limits, or mayors have chosen not to run. So we'll see. But I think we've got some momentum. I think we have some big things in front of us. Some things that we've already committed to that we need to execute upon, as well as some projects that need to be dealt with. And I think we'll see a council that'll stay relatively together. I know Ms. Gibson has chosen not to run and to throw her hat in the ring of another election, but I think there's a decent chance that the other members of the council could be back with us, and I think they've done a good job. I would be surprised if voters, I shouldn't say surprised. I think voters get to make that decision, certainly, but there's a lot of great things going on in our community right now, and I look forward to earning the opportunity to serve another couple of years.
When you look at the 2-year term, do you like the 2-year term? Do you think that's good for the council?
The council's 4 years.
Well, right,
council,
but for mayor.
I don't have a whole lot of choice about it. I think that's the way the charter's set up, and you go into it knowing about that. I can argue both sides. The challenge as a mayor is you always are running. If you choose, if you think about running for second term, it's a little bit like Congress.
Exactly.
They're always running for or state house seats. You're always sort of running for reelection. I think it keeps you on your game.
Yeah.
If nothing else, I think it keeps your eye on the ball. There's no taking 90 days off. So it's I'm okay with it the way it is.
Well, what is let's take a look at what you're in your first term as mayor right now. What would you say? And I know you talked about this a little bit yesterday during your press conference, but what would you say are the big accomplishments so far as during your term as mayor? Well,
we talked during the campaign about conservative common sense leadership, and I think. I hope our citizens look and say that from a financial standpoint, we've exercised a bit of common sense. I think we've quit swiping the credit card to the degree we can. We've we've issued debt for some long-term projects, but when it comes to buying trucks for Parks Department or police vehicles, we're not going to lease those things. We're not going to do that issue debt for that. We feel like we should be able to pay cash. We've found not just vehicles, but we've found $43 million worth of projects in the last 15 months that were slated to be paid for by debt that we've used cash on hand. The city's balance sheets are strong. When you look at particularly our different enterprise groups or business units, we might call in the private sector, many cases they were over reserved. They have a policy limit for reserves that they need to keep for whatever it may be, a failure of unplanned failure of a big piece of equipment, et cetera. But we had too much on hand. And so it's better, I believe, to put that cash to use. And I think our council believes let's go ahead and use that cash to pay for these projects. Instead of just having it on the balance sheet and issuing debt, even though it's relatively cheap to borrow, that debt doesn't go away, and it's something we have to pay for year after year after year. So I would say that's the first thing we would talk about. I think we would we'd talk about hiring a city manager. I think we did what we said we would do there. We'd do a thorough search, find somebody that has the requisite skills and experience to do the job. And I think Mr. Atkinson's done a wonderful job. I think I think you guys have noticed a change. He's open to he doesn't just close the door to his office and work there. He's in the community. He's willing to talk to media. He's willing to explain. He's done a nice job. He's now recruited a CFO. You'll see him make some org chart changes next week. I admire a leader who comes in and learns the organization and assesses where the strengths are and maybe where you could be a little bit better before they make changes. And you'll see that next week. And if you paid attention, those that have followed our budget process probably see some indications around some things that we're going to do or he's going to do. But those have been his calls, and I think it's something that will allow us to better serve our citizens. I think we've continued to look for efficiencies. We're trying to find better ways to run the business. A couple good examples around that. We've repurposed a number of our police vehicles. Some of the old blue and whites are now black and whites. You've seen them back out on the street, but they've got useful life left in them. We're challenging our leaders to look at the way they run their business, whether it's the police chief or the fire chief or public works or water. And we want them to think about different ways to do things. That doesn't mean we have to do it on the cheap. That's not what I'm suggesting. But I don't know about you, Chad, but at my house, we drive vehicles well past 100,000 miles. Yeah. And just trading a vehicle or replacing a vehicle because we've got 6 years and 110,000 miles on it, where we've got our own shop. We maintain them ourselves. Unless we've got something that's costing us an undue or unexpected amount of ongoing maintenance, we should be maintaining and continuing to use those vehicles. Another part of efficiency is around the health plan. I know you guys were just talking about the national health care predicament, quagmire, but we've been able to work.
Aren't you glad you don't have to deal with that?
Yes, sir, I am. Thank you. We've worked hard on the city health plan and made some structural changes to that, both in not a tremendous amount of benefit changes for our employees. I would argue we've added some things in that regard, but we've changed the way we buy reinsurance. We've changed the prescription plan a bit. We've asked our employees to contribute a bit, which I think in the private sector is something that we all expect. We're not breaking the bank. In fact, we're not saving all the money we're saving on the backs of our employees. But I do think when you pay a little bit, you start to focus a little bit more, pay a little more attention about how you spend those healthcare dollars, and we'll save $5 million this next year on the city health plan. So those are some of the accomplishments. We could go down the road a little bit. I think LPD, I'm proud of leadership at Lubbock Fire and Rescue and at LPD. We're full. We have 433 funded positions today. Every one of them's full with an officer. We'll fund 10 more positions in the new budget. I think things are good there. But we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. We're visiting with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope, who is running for re-election as mayor. And one of the things that it'll probably, I assume it will come up before re-election, but one of the things I know that you and the council that y'all been working on, and this will go forward under your leadership if re-elected, is what's going to happen with the police, what's going to happen with obviously we're looking at substations, but we're also determining Are we going to use City Hall for anything, old City Hall for anything, or are we going to build a whole new building? What does it look like for you?
Right. So that was the first thing I mentioned yesterday about what's in front of us, and we'll work on that this fall. We'll have some town halls within the next 30 days. In fact, I would expect that staff will be back to council maybe even before Thanksgiving, but certainly we think before end of the year to make a hard call on this. As a council, we've already endorsed, I guess you would say, sent the staff down this road of further studying substations, repurposing the old animal services building for our property warehouse, then also finding a location for municipal court. And then finally, and probably the most complex part of this is what we do with the downtown police headquarters. Today, when before this concept of community policing or decentralized policing was adopted or embraced, we thought we'd need about an 85,000 square foot downtown headquarters. Today, we feel like we need about 40 to 45,000 square feet downtown. That completely changes, I think, the thought or the equation around where we go. City Hall, the existing City Hall is still it's still an option. I'm reluctant to put my support on that until I know more about it. It's a 70-plus-year-old building, built as a department store originally. Would require quite a bit of retrofitting to move police headquarters into that. We very well could build a new facility for police and do it less expensively. We'll see. That's something we've got to look at.
Was that studied before when the previous council, before you were on there? Yeah. Wasn't that studied beforehand to say, okay, moving into this building and renovations would be cheaper than building a new building? Or
I don't. Yeah, there was a study that said $16 million to rehab City Hall.
Yeah.
You can't do 105,000 square feet for $16 million. You just can't do it. And then as they continued to look at it, we had a study that said it was going to cost $42 million. So I don't know what the number is. It certainly would be different now.
Those are two very different numbers.
They are. One's 3X. It would be very different today, or nearly 3X. It'd be very different today with a smaller administrative headquarters than it would have been for 80,000 square feet. But that's something that we will look at. There've been a number of studies out there. I mean, all I can deal with is the numbers that we've been presented to us as when we've been in office. The Citizens Tower piece. I didn't mention that earlier. I think it's something that we need to talk about. You and I've talked about it on the air. We talked about it during the campaign. I've said many times that I wish we'd voted on it. I would prefer that we'd put police in front of it if I'd had my druthers, but that's not what happened. We sat down sitting down at the poker table, and our hand had been dealt, and we had to play the hand. And I think we're going to try to play it the very best we can. We'll execute that. We'll bring it inside that budget that we've promised, that we've got a guaranteed maximum price from our contractor. We'll take care of the parking with that also. That's something that you should hold our council accountable for, the way we execute it. One of the challenges with 2-year mayoral terms is sort of what happened with Citizens Tower, because you had what leadership that changed. And I don't think, I think Glenn and his team did a good job. I'm not suggesting they didn't. It's just, we're the ones that now get to execute the plan.
Yeah. When we come back, we'll have, I think, one more segment with Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope here on the Chad Hasty Show, running for re-election. We'll be right back. All right, we're back on the Chad Hasty Show, live from the Culligan Water Studios, better water, pure and simple. Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope in studio, running for re-election, and we left off talking about the police. And one of the things, Mayor, that you had mentioned back when running first time for mayor would have loved for Citizens Tower to be voted on. Now we're talking about the police and what the future it's going to have. We know we're going to go to substations, which I think is a great idea. We don't know exactly what the, I guess, central location is going to be.
Right.
There's a question whether or not it should be voted on, or whether the council should just move forward. How do you feel about that?
I think we should vote on it. Regardless, I think I support it. So let's make sure we put that out there. I mean, it's not like I want us to vote on it because I don't believe in it. I think as a community, we would support our police, just like we have fire. I mean, you think about our last bond elections that have had fire stations in them. So, I think it would be good for our community because I think we'd be able to say we did this as a community. Then the council and staff would be able to execute on that plan, regardless of how we go about it, whether we vote on it or whether we issue COs, which is the council's way of funding it. It's going to impact our taxes. We think maybe just around 3 cents, maybe a little less, maybe not all in 1 year. We may be able to phase that in, just depending on how we sort of the timing of building of the facilities. I think that's an investment that our people are willing to make, but we want to be real transparent about that up front. But most importantly, we need to do it. I talked a little bit about it yesterday. I went through Leadership Lubbock in 1996. We toured the police station. We were talking in 1996 about replacing the police station. It's been a generation, Chad. We need to do right by our public servants, and so we need to get this done. I think our council's willing to do that.
Let's talk about issues that may come up in the future. Had a candidate on who's running for Karen's seat. He confirmed that some folks who tried to do the smoking ban a few years ago, and I know when you were in last time we talked about this, and you're like, I don't see that even coming back anytime soon. But it looks like they're going to come back with a new council and try to get something passed. How do you feel, today about a smoking ban?
Nothing's changed in my opinion. I think we've got a good smoking law. I'd like us to major on the, not major on the minors. Let's focus on the things that are most important to our citizens.
And as far as you know, and I know it was under a previous council when I believe they tabled that issue. Is that correct?
I can't tell you the answer to that. Yeah, I don't know the answer.
All right, I'll have to check with them.
I know. I mean, I know that American Cancer Society was in town last week. I think they were ginning up some support for it.
But you're still solid no.
I'm a solid no. I just think that we need to focus on the core requirements that the charter and that our citizens expect of us. Public safety, those city facilities that we own and need to maintain, whether it's the Civic Center or the airport or our parks. We need to take care of our streets. We need to provide an affordable, reliable, available supply for water and electricity. We need to make sure that we can take care of your trash. We need to make sure when you flush your toilet that it goes to the right spot. I mean, those are the things that we need to do. We need to do very well.
How are we doing infrastructure wise? Are we doing all right in Lubbock?
We're making progress.
Yeah.
We have I would say our physical plant is, if I were to grade the shape it's in, I would say it's probably a B or a B minus. Our roads are better than that. We've actually done a better job taking care of our streets. We have there's a way that cities measure that, and I can't call the exact numbers, but we're making progress on that. In this next year's budget, we'll spend $7 million on street maintenance, all cash. We'd like to spend 10, but we're not willing to finance anything. We think the next year we can get to that $10 million number. And, the airport needs some work. We've started some of that. Remember that all of that work is funded through user fees and federal transportation grants. I mean, I say all. There's a little bit of city contribution, but very, very small. We need to do some work there. We're working on that. Auditorium and Coliseum are two that we.
What's the future there? What do you think the future is with the Auditorium and Coliseum?
I think their better days are behind them. They cost us about $750,000 a year to operate. That's a net loss on an annual basis.
Should we have a vote to?
I think you'll hear us talk about that this fall. I think
to have a vote to either sell. Is it going to be a vote to sell it or give it to Texas Tech?
Well, we can't sell it. The state law that was passed in the 40s and it's been updated a couple times. But when we abandon it, if our citizens voted to abandon it, I believe is the language, then it would revert to Texas Tech.
And that's something it kind of seems like you think that needs to happen.
I do. I think with Buddy Holly Hall coming on, I think it replaces what the auditorium provides today. Certainly, we've much of what we relied on for the Coliseum was taken care of when United Spirit Arena was opened. We still have the dirt events. We need a solution for that. There's been some discussion around that. That's not something the city is leading. Not really sure the city needs to lead on that, but we could be part of that. I would love to think that the county and that maybe Tech and the county and maybe the city could come together on something like that. We'll see. That's there's really there really are no active discussions around that. But I do think one thing that if we're going to the only thing that I can think of that we need a solution for is the rodeo. I think what they've done for 75 years with the rodeo is good work. They're one of the largest. That event is one of the largest. Garners one of the largest bit of support for boys and girls clubs, into six figures every year. I think it's important to our community, a community like ours with the roots we have. We need to have a good rodeo, and so we'll work to make sure that we do right by that. But that's where I am on the Auditorium and Coliseum. Here's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want to have something happen at the auditorium. Let's say air conditioner goes out.
Right. Which could very well happen.
Any day.
Yeah.
And the council look at it and say, we're not going to spend those $5 million or whatever it costs to do that. And then we have to put a padlock on the door, or, and that's not good stewardship. While we're still using it, let's do it the right way. Let's tell the story to our citizens and not let them decide. But I do think the compelling fact is the cost, the loss we have every year, and the fact that we've got millions, if not tens of millions, of just deferred maintenance on those two facilities. Things that, for the most part, we wouldn't see. Maybe a new roof, you might be able to notice a difference in the color. But most of that, it's not things that you would see. That's before we get to accessibility. That's before we get to bathrooms. I mean, that we really need to be upgraded. If you've been to the auditorium, recently you're reminded of how difficult the bathroom situation is.
So are you saying this fall or next?
We can't do it.
We
can't do it this fall. With the discussion, the wind is passed. I think this council is willing to talk about it. I think we seem to be of the spirit that, or of the thought that, why kick it down the road if it needs to be dealt with? Let's try to deal with it. Yeah, and so I think you'll see us deal with it.
Obviously, I know downtown is big for the entire council, including yourself. In the time that we have left, I want you to go ahead and tell listeners, if reelected mayor, what a couple of your big focuses will be, not only on downtown, but on things that maybe we're not even talking about today, but that, with you, knowing things behind the scenes, something's going to come up in the future, or something may pop up in the future. What are some of those items that will be coming up that you're looking forward to being reelected to lead on?
Well, I think the police, we've talked about it. I'm sort of dodging your question for a minute, but we've got to take care of the police piece first. That's job one, I think. I think second is jobs. That's not some grand scheme out there, but jobs are critical. And we've created a lot of jobs. We've created 3,100 jobs in the time we've been in office, according to the Texas Workforce Commission reports. But we need more good jobs. We need jobs that keep college graduates in our community. We need jobs that young men and women that come out of South Plains College with technical skills. We don't need them to be underemployed. We need good jobs. We've got to work with higher ed. We've got to work with our medical community. We've got to work with our businesses that are here and look for ways to expand, look for ways to attract business here. Bear Crop Science is a great example. That's the kind of people that need to be in West Texas. This is where their cotton seed business for the world is based here. Where else would you want it? You've got the leading institution, arguably in the world around cottonseed technology. Texas Tech University. You got Bear here working together. You know, they've done a bunch of things, and that's great. But the good news for Lubbockites is the investment, lots of capital investment, goes on the tax rolls. That means it spreads that tax burden out, and great jobs. Those people are buying houses. They're going to the grocery store. They're buying cars. They're buying clothes for their kids. They're buying our goods and services. And that's what we need to be working on. I don't have some grand plan that's going to cost citizens lots and lots of money. I think what it is about executing what we've got on the board today and selling Lubbock, Texas, selling it. We've got so much going on. You know, there's sort of a joke in business about don't let a good crisis pass you by. You know, in other words, when a crisis comes along, it's a good time to right size your business, to take some expense out, blah, blah, blah. Well, we also, on the other side, you don't want to sleep through a boom time. Yeah. And we're not going to have a Midland, Odessa boom, but we're growing at a rate for us that's very, very healthy, 1.5% to 2%. The business fundamentals are very, very strong. We don't need to miss the opportunities that go along with that.
Lubbock Mayor Dan Pope, appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll visit more during your campaign.
Thanks for having me, Chad.
You bet.